So, I'm Sarah Parry from the University of Edinburgh. This is Lynn Castles, one of our partners and community researchers as part of this project. Now, we all know as academic researchers that doing research, getting out in the field, collecting data is always joy and it's one of the best parts of our job. But this is a project that has been more than that. It's been a complete and thorough privilege. And I hope that we can convey that, because I think everyone as part of this team that we're here representing feels that for this particular project. So, this is Flex Fund, a couple of years we've been going, now have some follow-on funding to develop further. So today I'm going to give you a brief overview of the project, what we were doing and its orienting ideas. Then Lynn is going to talk about Lynn Brett Croft, one of our case studies. We're going to talk, then I'll come back to me, talk about the process, the research process itself, back to some findings and some next steps. So this project, has this kind of orienting question of how do communities in Badenoch and Strathspey experience and practice care for people, nature and place. Now there's some coloured words there for a reason. So the first is to indicate that we were focusing on communities in a particular place, in Badenoch and Strathspey. So we all live in Badenoch and Strathspey. This is in the Scottish Highlands, in the Cairngorm National Park, a very beautiful part of the world. And we were interested in how those communities experience and practice care. So care is having these two parts, I'll come back to that. For people, nature and place. So where care for nature and for people come together and overlap. So we focused on these three case studies where environmental action is taking place in our region that already self-identify as caring for people, nature and place. So when we were designing the project, we were looking for environmental projects that were already self-declaring that they do this. So the first one, we've got these three cases. One is Carbridge Community Orchard. They're all very different cases. So this is about just a little bit more than half an acre. It's a fairly new project, where they are creating an orchard in the village on what was a derelict site in the very centre of a small village in Highlands. The next one is Lynn Brett Croft, and I'm not going to say much more than that, but in terms of scale, it's worth mentioning, we're getting bigger now, so we've gone from half an acre to Lynn Brett Croft, which is 150 acres. And then the third case study is Wildland Limited, and now we're talking about an organisation that owns about 1% of Scotland. So this is the Danish billionaire Anders Poulsen, who owns about 221,000 acres in Scotland, of which 148,000 are in the Cairngorm National Park in our region. So this is a huge project which is focused on, as they call it, landscape restoration, internationally lauded, locally questioned. We'll talk about that.
So well.
There we go. So, okay, so we're interested in care, but not, we didn't want to take care for granted. We really want to delve into what it means. So we started with this introduction to kind of ethics of care. So one of the things that I will say about this project is we really do embody throughout the project the spirit of the guiding principles of access. So in all of our case studies, we employed community-based researchers who worked with us, and we learned together about ethics of care through various workshops, and we've really been developing our understanding of care from the academic side, bringing it to our partners, who then bring it back to us as to how it's working on the ground. So it's been an ongoing dialogue for 2 years. It's brilliant. So we're understanding care as having these two parts. It's an orientation to the world. For those of you that do have a social science background, you'll be really familiar with this. So it's an ontology of interconnectedness, of interdependence, and it's also something we do. So it's a set of practices. So it tells us that all life is interdependent, and this has been our foundation, but it also, in turn, guides us towards research that focuses on relationships, towards looking at where those relationships exist, what's the character of those relationships, what relationships are absent, which ones need repair. In terms of not taking care at face value, then obviously we've been interested in, well, what is done in the name of care? What kind of practices, how do people feel and experience care as well? So we've been trying to bring all of this to bear in our conversations and in our research. And then the idea is that from learning from this, we can place greater value on where good relationships exist, on good care, and to identify and learn from them, build and support them. And so we're trying as academic researchers to build alliances with the communities with whom we're researching as well. So the final point to say about an ethics of care for us is that this is not armchair theorising. So, and that is actually part of the premise of an ethics of care too, is that it comes from close engagement with care in specific places, in specific lived contexts. So our starting point was that care already, the solutions that align with an ethics of care already exists out there in the world. It's just not everywhere all at once. And so these cases were identified in order for us to start to understand what kind of care different kinds of projects are enacting. And it's another also way of saying that, you know, care is always partial. Because these are not perfectionist categories either, and that isn't certainly, there's no moralising going on here. So we had those kinds of questions that I've already mentioned about where care is present, absent, changing, and we've also been thinking about care as more than just an interhuman phenomena, but also something that's interspecies, cross-generational, which really matters in cases like Wildland, which is, I mean, one of its key kind of messages is that they have this 200-year vision. So thinking about issues around heritage, so bringing from the past through to the future as well. So thinking about generational matters too in the research. The final thing I need to say is that the way in which we did the research was each case study was studied rather differently. So we adopted different kinds of methods for each case. And I'll come back to that in a minute in relation to Lynbrook Croft, but some were more interview focused, others were more participant observation, and then we'll come back to Lynbrook and what we did there in a moment. But for now, I think you'd really like to hear about Lynbrook Croft.
Thank you so much, Sarah. You'll notice that my slides are just basically pretty pictures. That's my way of distracting you to show you about this incredibly beautiful place that I live and work in. Thank you so much for having me here today, and it's just been such a privilege to work with Sarah from the University of Edinburgh. It was really lovely hearing yesterday about how there was a real desire for people in this room to hear about case studies. Well, I'm a case study, so all I'm going to be doing with you today is sharing my story, my experience, and what I've learned as being a part of this research project. But I want to give you a little bit of an introduction to myself and Sandra, so you can see me there, and that's my partner Sandra there yesterday. It was very comforting for me yesterday to see lots of people standing up here saying I'm not an academic or I'm not a scientist, because I'm not an academic, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a social scientist, I'm not a natural scientist, I'm not a policymaker. My day-to-day work is the opposite of what we're doing right now. I'm outside, I have a small croft, which is a farm, for those of you that don't know that terminology. And we live on our farm in the Cairngorms National Park in the Highlands of Scotland. Our focus is very much living off the land. So when we met in 2012, we had this quite naive dream to live off the land, to live the good life. It's dangerous where naivety can get you to in the world, and we found ourselves in this beautiful part of the world. I just want to tell you now a little bit about what it is exactly that we do. So Sandra and I have no background in farming. I do have a tiny little bit of an academic background. I graduated from University College London in 2008 with a master's degree. Sandra left school at the age of 14. But in 2008, from that point on, I've only ever worked in practical outdoor jobs just because that's what makes me really happy. And I just love being in the environment with nature and the outdoors. That's where care really sits for me. So what is it that we do on this beautiful farm that we have? Well, we have Highland cattle and Highland Shorthorn Cross, where we produce beef. We have rare breed pigs, where we produce pork. We have pasture hens, where we produce pastured eggs. We have beehives, where we produce honey. We have, in the summer, we have small-scale commercial veg that we grow and sell into our local community. We're also really passionate about growing our own food. So Sandra has amazingly cultivated this beautiful kitchen garden where we're 100% self-sufficient in our own vegetables and fruit, and we're obviously completely self-sufficient in meat, eggs, and honey as well. So we're very passionate about living well. We're very passionate about sharing that knowledge with other people, and we're very passionate about doing it in a way that's open and honest and authentic, and sometimes a little bit vulnerable.
Okay, a little bit about a very brief couple of points about the research process itself. So, did lots of research before into Limerick Craft before we met. So, although Lynn and Sandra no longer use social media at the time, they'd been on This Farming Life. They're pretty famous in our region. Got a book. There's lots going on social media and on the internet. Learn about craft, and then I went on a tour of the craft, invited them to be part of the research and suggested that we do a collaborative autoethnography. So the research process has involved us working over very lengthy meetings, included getting a parking fine because we spent too long in a particular place talking for 4 hours, and really delving into getting a lot of deep reflection into networks of care. Thinking about what care means, how it's practiced, how to understand it. And, Lynn is the only one as part of this project who, I teach at the University of Edinburgh honours third year 3-4 course called Care and Sustainability. I had to give all of my readings to Lynn. So she wanted them all. So the engagement with the academic literature has also been very rich, and we're building, as you can see, a nice ongoing relationship. But what did we find? What did we learn?
Yeah, and just before I go into that, I do want to be very honest that I had to Google what autoethnography meant. I'm pretty sure I knew what auto meant, but ethnography, no, I don't know what that means. And Sandra definitely didn't know what that meant. So I said to Sarah, and I'll share with you very honestly today, that being a part of this project for us has been genuinely life-changing in all sorts of different ways. Sarah approached us at a time when things were going pretty well. We'd started to build up the farm from this kind of completely derelict land holding into a kind of a thriving business, but we were kind of working a bit too hard. We were trying a bit too hard, and things just didn't seem right. They just didn't seem to fit. And so by being offered an opportunity to be part of this research project was going to give us an opportunity to just press pause, just try and take that opportunity just to reset and renew what it was that we were doing. So I want to explain to you, very short, what the project meant to us each individually. So for Sandra, I don't know why I chose a picture of pigs. But it's just a really great picture. These are actually our current lot of boys here on at the minute. These are Oxford Sandy and Blacks, and they're absolute hoot. So for Sandra, the epiphany that she had whenever we undertook our research, which was in effect creating some very kind of quite simple diagrams and mind maps and writing some stories, her epiphany was the value and the understanding of the relationships that we have at Limerick. Now yesterday, sorry, I can't remember your name, you did a talk yesterday.
Oh,
Beth. So Beth, when you were talking about toolkit, and how there's this kind of almost desire to create another new toolkit. For me, and for Sandra and I, what we felt the power of this project was that it stripped everything back to the basics, and that actually a lot of how we need to extract information exists in a way that's actually deceptively simple. So Sandra, through her work, was able to identify different relationships, which ones were caring, which ones were maybe uncaring, and just started to get an overview as to which ones maybe required more nurturing, which ones were already there in place, and which ones really helped us to thrive at Limerick, thrive in our community, and help our land to thrive too. So that was her learning, was that simplicity of understanding the relationships that we have. For me, this project really helped me to get a bird's eye view. This is one of our hens. hens Rocky. All of our hens don't have names, by the way, I should say. We've got over 100 hens, but this one does have a name. It just really helped me to get that bird's eye view. So you know how in life sometimes everything just gets so swirled, and we were hearing this feedback from Sarah saying what you do is really great, and we're struggling to see it. For me, it really helped me to kind of zoom out, and that led to many big decisions that we've made at Limbrack since we've been a part of this project. But one was, as Sarah alluded to, we took ourselves off social media. That goes against everything that you're told to be a successful business, to make money, to market yourselves. But whenever I started to do my diagrams and I started to see my relationships and I started to see where we were thriving and not, it really brought into context for me that social media was not in alignment with how we wanted to share our story. So being a part of the project and seeing our strengths helped us to make that decision, and we've not looked back ever since.
Okay, I know we're out of time, so I'm going to quick. I'm not going to go through. I was potentially going to talk about sort of academic perspective on how and frame it as we do, but we'll be writing about that. So you can all catch that or talk to me later about how the kinds of things that we've been talking about and putting it in conversation with the wider literature on ethics of care. So what are we doing next? So shall I go for it? Okay, so we've got a bit of funding. So we developed a booklet called, as part of another thread to the project. We had music written about all of our case studies and performed at Celtic Connections. And as part of that, we created a booklet which was to try and anchor the music in the research itself and research findings. So we have this booklet that was circulated at Celtic Connections, but it's just a prototype, and we're going to develop it into a care book. And that's what we're working on at the minute. We've just been having meetings with various community groups in the region who are helping us to, we gave them the booklet, and people who've been part of the research as well, and they're helping us to rewrite it and make it work. And it's a booklet that's going to, the aim of it is it's not a toolkit.
It's so not a toolkit.
It's telling stories. It's very much a device for telling stories in order to evoke new stories. And we're developing short videos to accompany that care book. Lynn?
Yeah, so this was a pilot project which Sarah at the University of Edinburgh has been championing, and she's really opened a hornet's nest because it's resulted in lots of ideas that we can see can grow from the ground up. So one of the ideas that we've been having and mulling around is the idea of writing what we call a 100 Small Farms Manifesto. So it's been taking what happens at Limbrack and what we do at Limbrack that's built on a foundation of care, and seeing what that would look like if it was that was rolled out over places like wildland, over places that are owned by large landowners, because there's a real desire for small-scale farming and people to connect with the land. So that's one of the many ideas that we've had as a result of this pilot project. So how we take that forward is our next challenge.
So the other thing is we've learned about the role of care facilitators. So myself and Rachel Hunt, the other academic that's working on this, who's in geography at Edinburgh, we've kind of been the de facto care facilitators throughout this project, having these ongoing deep relationships with people with whom we've been researching and learning from. And thinking about one of the things that's clear and we're hearing back from the communities has been the value of that, of the ongoing kind of conversations about really abstract, theoretical concepts and ideas, and really trying to shift towards that relational ontology and how difficult that is, how disruptive that is. And so thinking about the role of care facilitators as a future avenue and what that would look like. And finally, I mean, we already have, as part of the project, we're developing people like, Lynn is a care champion already for us. And so working with partners like this, what do alliances look like? Well, it looks like this. This is what co-production looks like. It takes years, it takes so much time, and it doesn't end when the funding ends either. So it's that commitment to a place, to the people, where even when the funding has gone, which it has, but the work has to continue. So we still haven't done the writing, but we're doing it together. So when the writing, the academic writing starts, then Lynn is already forewarned that she will be part of that writing, even though she told me she'd rather do making charcoal. So yeah, there's lots to come, but it is coming. But thanks very much.